I think what makes something a separate object is something that has been divided from something else. It used to be part of that main object, but it has been cut, divided. The bonds were broken. But molecules can't help but be a separate object, because nothing can be where that thing is. You know, like a car crash is like when two forces of lots of different objects come together. And it's like they're trying their hardest to come together, but they physically can't be where the other object is. So it creates destruction. It also creates sound. Whenever you hit something, it's the same thing. My hand can't be where the molecules of that leather are. It physically can't. They're being repelled, so it creates movement. Like the same thing with air. Air does get into things, though. But it is still not that thing. Hydrogen and oxygen are not that thing. We call it one thing because that's how we recognize the structure. Like what happens when there's a crash or somebody being hit is that the structure of that thing is questioned. And when you question the structure of something, if it's strong enough, it will not fall. But if it is weak, it will divide and become separate objects. I'm trying to think about time. You know, we understand time as something passing because our memories remember the past as something separate than what is now. And when you die, it's as if you're pausing for a very long time. Or it's as if you're pausing that energy. Like the past is called the past because it is a different object. It is a different section, and our minds have to clean and put new things in the place that was there. So an abstract thought is when you have a picture and you take things out of that picture, but you don't take everything out of that picture, and you put new things in that picture, you know, and that's kind of hard to describe, but let's say there's a circle. Like my eye is a circle, but goat's eyes are square. Now, when you look at me and then you look away from me, can you imagine me having square eyes? You know, do you imagine my eyes as the same color as you saw them? Because all you're focusing on is changing the lines around the color. You're focusing on changing the shape, not the color. But now when I mention color, your mind is like, well, what does it look like with other colors, you know? And let's say you're remembering an event that happened, a sequence of events. What we do is, in order to learn an action, we have to separate the actions. Because when you watch your mom or even your dad, they're moving constantly all day. What you do to learn how to copy them is you separate the different actions they do, which is what you recognize as a habit. And then when you can separate the actions, you can access them more quickly in your memory, and copy them, because you don't have to think about everything else that came before it. You just start at the place you want to start. That's why people don't think the same. And literally can't, because they see different things. And they create different ways of combining those things. I really don't think that there is anything that someone does that is completely new that no one has seen before. Because, okay, let's say you minimize everything in your life and you see just the color white your entire life. You learn to because we know the color white is all the different colors combined. My theory is that you would eventually be able to distinguish the different colors in the color white. I think somebody's probably thought of that before, but like you separate, because there's different wavelengths. And like, that's kind of like where contrast is, because contrast is black. It's dark. It's your brain not being able to work. Because when you can't receive information, it's black. And the night is black. And then there's stars, which are spots of light. And I want to know if the sun is actually yellow, or if that's an effect of the firmament causing it to be yellow. Because when the sun goes on the horizon, it changes colors. It's often pink. But let's say the Earth is in a different place in its rotation, closer or further away from the sun, it can be the same color as it is right now, which is like a yellow, you know. I know. So I know I'm not the best at singing, but here's what helps me know I am doing better with my singing and hitting the right note, is that I remember in my mind that like what that note actually is. And I have to remember a lot of the times the scenario that I learned it from that actually made me remember it and want to copy it, you know. And there are a lot of things, like when I create something that is new to me, I forget where I learned all of those things from, but that doesn't mean that those things I didn't see before, you know. Because my mind can forget the picture, but remember the direction of the lines that I saw. Or the direction it wanted me to go in. And then how I thought I should approach that, you know. That's how I remember it. Like, let's say I'm tying a knot. I don't premeditate on how I'm going to tie the knot now. I just do it. But I wasn't able to do that at first. I had to be shown how to do it. Over and over again, because that's how I learn. I have to learn something over and over again and see it and hear it over and over again. Otherwise, I will not remember it. Because a lot of my thoughts just immediately go to my long-term memory now. And my short-term memory is very bad. It's getting better now because I'm trying to really focus on it, you know. And then I do forget things in my long-term memory. But I think there's like a middle-term memory too, where say I learned something a month ago. It's not exactly long-term. That's a month ago, you know. It's still very present to me. But something that happened when I was nursing, I can remember that. How it was. And my question to myself is how I know that's how it was, you know. Ugh. Like maybe it's the way my body reacted to it that I remember, you know. People would say it's your emotion, but I don't necessarily think it's just emotion. It's the way your body reacted to it. And the soul is a real thing. That's what people are trying to say when they say emotion. Your soul is what you perceive as right and wrong, and your willpower to steer where you need to go. And like I honestly I can't describe what your soul is like, because I can't describe it. I can't describe what my soul's like. It's just something I know. And it's interesting because we know what's right and wrong, even if someone doesn't teach us, you know? I think that can be learned from when something happened in the past that went in a direction that we didn't like. Or when something broke that we needed to use. And a use could be to make someone else happy, you know. It doesn't have to be just use doesn't just mean for my own purposes. People do turn good purposes and something they do for someone else as something that benefits them more in the long run, which means you aren't actually doing that for them, you know. I think that's why the place in the Bible where Jesus is in the temple with his disciples and the woman, okay, so they were doing offerings, the whole town was, and there was a lot of people who were very wealthy who were coming in, and they were giving lots of money to the cause, and they were very wealthy, and they were doing lots of good things for the cause. But there's a woman who came in who she just had 2 shekels. She didn't have enough to sustain the cause. Because there's taxes in Roman times too. But Jesus says she gave more than everybody because that was all she had. You know, that's why I think real giving is. There is also a place in the Bible that says, he who doesn't take care of his own household is worse than an unbeliever. But even then, he's talking about a man. And the man is the one who he has to provide for other people. Like, if he doesn't, he feels very bad about himself. And if he doesn't do that, there is something very wrong. Because he's trying to take from others. I think the reason why it's wrong is because like he was given more when he was born physically, because men have greater body masses, they have muscles that were built differently, and they have different, they can hold more things than a woman can. There are differences in genes, but my brother, he's hella skinny, but he is very strong. And that's because of the way his body is structured. It's not sexist to notice that. Like, another thing is, men on average have a greater amount of blood in their system, and they have a different kind of blood than a woman does, and their skin is thicker, and they're younger for longer. Their skin is younger for longer. There are disadvantages to being a man that a woman doesn't have. Like, women do tend to live longer, but they're not, it depends on how their body handles different things, you know, and what things you consume and you put and you take in, you know. And then, because the things you take in are the things you copy. You know, you literally can't help it, because your brain makes a copy of that thing that you saw, you know. I don't really think that colorblind people are disabled, because they're using different, they understand how to use the tools that they can use to get the job done. More than a person who doesn't have that restriction would use. They can, in fact, I think they're more talented because they can survive with fewer assets, which is hard to do for anyone. And that is the goal of a business or a building, is to survive on as few assets as you can, but still provide, you know. Of course, it doesn't provide them with that information that they would have if they had that thing, but the Bible says the meek shall inherit the earth. And he who is faithful in a few things will be I think either faithful in much or given much. I'm not sure. I just don't believe in calling a restriction or a missing object from the structure you have as a inability to solve the problem, you know. The thing is, like, people want to make it that way because of things like driving and stuff like that. The thing is, most of the time they can still do that. They need to find a different solution to being able to do that activity, you know. Like, of course, if something is shaped a different way, you can't be that shape and have that shape and move like that shape. But I think that the movement is different than the effect, you know. I don't know. Just all my long thoughts. All right. See you guys later. Mwah.